She built a $4 million mansion on land that didn't belong to her. It belonged to me. And somehow, everyone acted like that was completely normal. No questions asked, no resistance from the city. Just documents quietly slipping into the right hands at the right time. But here's the thing about being a high school geography teacher. You spend your life studying maps. You learn that the lines drawn on paper aren't just ink. They represent history, ownership, and boundaries that aren't meant to be crossed just because someone has money and influence. What she buried beneath that marble foyer and heated infinity pool wasn't just land. It was a promise made to this neighborhood decades ago. A promise she believed no one would ever uncover. But I did. I uncovered it, cleaned off the dust, and used it to bring her entire empire crashing down. My name is Connor, and if you've ever dealt with someone who thought their money made them untouchable, you'll want to hear this. Because what happened between me and the president of the Meadowbrook Estates, HOA, wasn't just a disagreement over property. It was a full-blown war. But to understand it, you have to go back to the beginning, before the lawyers, before the lawsuits, before everything fell apart. I was 35, exhausted from living in cramped apartments where I could hear every sound through paper-thin walls. I wanted something permanent, something quiet. So when I found a vacant lot in Meadowbrook Estates, it felt like I had finally caught a break. It wasn't much, just a patch of wild grass shaded by towering old oak trees. But it was affordable, and more importantly, it was mine. I remember standing there the day after closing, taking a deep breath and imagining the future. A small porch, maybe a dog running through the yard, peace and quiet. That peace lasted exactly 20 minutes. Then I heard the crunch of gravel. A spotless pearl white Escalade pulled up, gleaming like something out of place in that setting. The window rolled down, and there she was, Cheryl. She didn't just step out of the vehicle. She made an entrance, dressed in a beige pantsuit that probably cost more than my car, her hair perfectly styled. She held a clipboard like it was a weapon. "Welcome to Meadowbrook," she said. It didn't feel like a welcome. It felt like a warning. She walked onto my property, with the confidence of someone who believed she owned everything in sight. Her eyes scanned the lot, taking in every detail, the weeds, the lumber, the survey markers. You could practically see her calculating how much trouble I might cause. "I'm Cheryl," she said, offering a hand that felt as cold as stone. "HOA president. We like to start off on the right foot here. I assume you reviewed the covenants." Before I could respond, she reached into her SUV and pulled out a massive binder, easily 3 inches thick, and dropped it into my hands. The weight alone nearly pulled my arms down. Section 4, Paragraph 2. No construction materials visible from the street for more than 24 hours, she recited, without even glancing at the pages. Section 9. Grass height must be maintained at exactly 2.5 inches. Not more, not less. And mailboxes must be precisely 42 inches tall. We just made the Johnsons replace theirs last week. It was 43. She gave a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We have standards here, Connor. Property values are everything. Rustic isn't part of plan." For the next 20 minutes, she lectured me on every rule imaginable, including the exact shades of beige I was allowed to paint my future home. By the time she finally drove away, leaving behind a trail of expensive perfume, I felt like I'd just been scolded into tension. Once the dust settled, my neighbor from across the street wandered over. His name was Arthur. He was the complete opposite of Cheryl, wearing suspenders, hands covered in dirt, and actually looking like he enjoyed life. "Don't pay her too much attention," Arthur said, leaning on his garden hoe. "She acts like she owns the place. Just keep your head down." Then he glanced at my lot, and his expression shifted, almost nostalgic. "You know," he said, "back in the early 90s, before all these big houses went up, the city had plans for this land. A park, playground, walking trails, the whole thing." He nudged a patch of grass with his foot. "Funny how things just disappear, isn't it?" That line stuck with me. Funny how things disappear. 3 weeks later, I was sitting with my morning coffee, wondering why my building permit was taking so long, when the mailman handed me a certified letter. Bright red letters stamped across it, urgent. The sender, Meadowbrook Estates HOA. Opened it. Notice of unauthorized construction activity. It claimed I was encroaching on newly acquired HOA land and ordered me to stop all work immediately. Legal action would follow. I stepped outside, confused. I hadn't even started building yet. No foundation, nothing. Just clearing brush. How could I be encroaching? I drove straight to the county clerk's office and pulled the latest maps. That's when I saw it. A narrow strip of land running along the edge of my property. The exact spot where my driveway needed to go. It had been sold. What used to be labeled public surplus land was now owned by the Meadowbrook HOA. Cheryl had bought it right out from under me, and it wasn't random. That strip of land was positioned perfectly to block access to the most usable part of my property. It was deliberate, a calculated move. That night, I sat at my table staring at the survey. The price listed to the land was almost laughable, far below its value, which raised a bigger question. How did she even know it was available? Surplus land doesn't just get advertised. You have to know where to look or who to ask. So I started digging. Research is what I do. I spent the entire weekend at the city planning office, going through records. What I found wasn't just a coincidence. It was a pattern. Over the past 5 years, Cheryl, through the HOA, had quietly purchased multiple abandoned or unclaimed parcels throughout the neighborhood. Every single one served a purpose: expanding control, securing views, limiting access. And the largest portion of land she acquired, it was right next to mine. Worse, construction had already started on it. When I drove by later that day, it wasn't a park or a community space. It was a massive foundation for a guest house and pool complex directly connected to Cheryl's property. She wasn't acting for the HOA. She was using it. This was a land grab, plain and simple. I confronted a city planner named Ben, but he barely looked at me. He dismissed everything as routine, insisting the sale was legal. But something about his behavior felt off, like he knew more than he was willing to admit. So I went deeper. If the digital records weren't reliable, I'd find the paper trail. At the Historical Archives, I found a file labeled Harmony Park Proposal 1992. And when I opened it, everything changed. The park wasn't just an idea. It had been fully approved, fully funded, and fully built. There were photos of playgrounds, picnic areas, even a pavilion. A $2.3 million project gone, erased, replaced by Cheryl's mansion and empty lots. I sat there in silence, trying to process it. How does an entire park just disappear? I copied everything, documents, photos, maps, and sent a formal request to the HOA asking for clarification. 2 days later, Cheryl called. Her tone was smooth, almost friendly, inviting me over for a private conversation. But when I suggested discussing it publicly at the next meeting, her tone shifted. Cold, sharp, she offered to resolve my permit issues quietly. I refused. That's when the war began, not with shouting or violence, but paperwork, fines, violations, rumors. She turned the neighborhood against me. Then came the intimidation. My truck tires slashed, a clear message to leave. For a moment, I considered walking away. It would have been easier. But then I looked at the old photo of kids playing in that park, right where construction now stood, and I knew I couldn't. So I called a lawyer, and that's when everything truly began.